Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. With board members and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda, Commissioner Spence.
Greetings, Supervisor Fletcher and members of the Board of Trustees here. I like to visit occasionally and give feedback about things that are happening that might impact Delta Township that are happening at the county level. I'll start out by saying that right now, just like I'm sure you guys here go through this process, we're going through a budget process which has been communicated pretty broadly. And it's not a secret at all that Eaton County probably is in a budget crisis situation this year. We are trying to plug a $5 million hole, which has arisen at least in part as a result of some of the activities of MERS to increase our contributions to some of the plans that we're in. And we've been discussing that as a part of our budget. It looks like we're going to have to go through some unusual activity at the budget level this year for the year that begins October 1st in order to get the balanced budget that we are required by law to get. And I know that you're already aware of that stress and the possibility that it might impact on people here in Delta Township. And I have tried to advocate and make sure that the people, my fellow commissioners, are aware of what I see as the interests of Delta Township in terms of the services they provide and how they interact with the Township Board. I'll preface my statements by saying I really do appreciate the fact that you've already begun to show your concern about that on behalf of the people of Delta Township. Brian Reed and your financial manager have been to at least one or two of our budget meetings, and I'm sure that they have been giving you some feedback and reports. I'm just here today to indicate to you that we are going through that process, and at this point in time, it seems that at least among the members of the Board of Commissioners, some of my fellow commissioners, that the answer to dealing with that $5 million shortfall is going to require a reduction in services, which readily translates in terms of our budget to personnel, and in particular, because our budget is so personnel and benefit intensive in terms of where we have discretion, it may possibly impact here in Delta. And in particular, one of the proposals that is still on the table, I've advocated the position that in budget reduction times, we certainly want to preserve our asset, probably our greatest asset, which is our people, our employees, and to the extent possible, take it out of other venues or other areas of our budget. But it looks as though we are actually looking at a deficit that our controller has approached with a recommendation. Many of the members of the Board of Commissioners have come to the conclusion that ultimately we're going to have to possibly reduce over 20 positions from our payroll. And looking through our budget, some of the recommendations that have come from our chairman of our Ways and Means Committee, one of them that we're looking at is the possibility of cutting the sheriff's budget pretty significantly. The proposal that's still on the table is to cut 24 positions out of the road patrol of the Eaton County Sheriff's Department. And within my understanding of the interaction with the Sheriff's Department, Eaton County, and this township and your contract, I have pointed out that those cuts, at least from my outside perspective, would probably not impact Delta because there's a contract in place that we're required to honor. And the feedback is, and I think Brian may have already told you this, is that some of the commissioners think that this is a shared pain type of process and that they will be coming back and talking to Delta about the contract. And so you will probably be hearing about it formally shortly in terms of what the county may be wanting from you in terms of either accommodations or modifications to your contract or whatever. And I took the occasion to come and talk to you about it because even though the contract is in place, I hear statements which I think are somewhat less than responsible in terms of the county's obligation to Delta when they say, well, you know, the contract can be terminated by either party with 1 year's notice, which I assume is true. I've not looked at your contract. That's not my issue. But I did want to indicate that a part of my concern is that even in that first year, if we do take that type of manpower assessment from the sheriff and do layoffs because of the contractual nature of collective bargaining agreements and so forth, and not knowing your contract, but knowing that the members of the Delta Patrol are within that collective bargaining unit, if that does go through, and I'm assuming at this point it will, that impacts people here in Delta in terms of even if you keep the same number of positions, you may have difficulty keeping the same officers that have been trained and have worked here in our community, especially the younger ones, assuming that there is a seniority provision in there. And we all know that, speaking as a resident here in Delta, we're very pleased with the people that we've been able over the years to bring into our police force to protect us, to make sure our community functions safely. So I wanted you to be aware of that. I don't know if the commission has communicated that in any way to you other than through me coming to you today. But in the process of the budget discussions, I see that the other commissioners on our board have gone out to their townships and are bringing feedback about ways that they can make contributions or ways that they think that the County Board of Commissioners should address this budgetary shortfall. And I just wanted to extend to you, as a member of our community, the opportunity in public comment, just as I do, or in written comment, or through back channels, that you might well want to be current and apprised of that particular situation, perhaps talk to the sheriff. The undersheriff did make some statements to us at our last budget planning meeting to indicate that it's not just the manpower in the out county that would be impacted, but throughout the county, which I think is pretty obvious. So because this is such an important issue to Delta and our government here on the local level, I did want to bring that to your attention. I'm sure that your manager, Brian Reed, is aware of the fact that we're going through the process. We do have our next budgetary Ways and Means meeting this coming Friday, the 16th. And at that point, we're going to be looking very closely as we begin to make final decisions about what will be in our budget. I believe that the Sheriff's Department has been directed to indicate how they would do their fair share of absorbing some of these losses. And I'm expecting that Under Sheriff Cook or Sheriff Reich will be making presentations Friday about what they can do to help. And of course, because we're dealing here with employees who are in collective bargaining units, it becomes a little more difficult, a little more legally complex about how things occur. The sheriff has already given a preview that there are some cuts in positions that he could make outside of the sworn officers and outside of the jail. But it's a significant enough issue that I felt I would be remiss if I didn't come here as a representative of the people here in Delta and make sure that you were formally aware of that situation and had a chance to discuss it, or at least have your employees monitor it for you. So that is the purpose of my taking so much of your time. I did feel that I should bring that to your attention. Corollary to that, and again, it's all going to budgeting. Right now, there are some elements within the commission that are pushing for an upgrade, which is really truly needed in our emergency response 911 type of operation. But that is also something that some people want to begin implementing this year, which would impose additional costs in the coming budget year and probably not lead to any noticeable changes in the quality of service of the radio service, of the EMS 911 dispatch service. And I have taken a position that although very needed, and when we're looking at times in which we may be cutting back in our public safety, first responders from the county on the county level, it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy new equipment so that there can be better communication between and among law enforcement personnel who may not actually even physically still be there. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to try to deal with those if you have time to allot to me. Otherwise, I would just extend again the invitation. The commission full meeting for public comment is Wednesday at 7 in Charlotte, but the actual budgetary work discussion, presentation by the Sheriff's Department and others, all of our departments are making contributions, will be Friday in the Ways and Means meeting, and I believe it starts at 8:30. So I do thank you for your time, Supervisor.
Well, thanks, Commissioner Spence. We appreciate you coming here and, providing this information. It is obviously something that we have heard about. There has been no formal communication from the county or anything in terms of any specific, discussions, because I'm not sure if you guys have come to any firm
final
conclusions.
decisions,
So
right.
there's nothing that's been officially communicated yet. Could you take a few minutes and just kind of explain how the county got in this deficit? Because I know as a township, we're actually seeing revenues increase. So our revenue is coming in better than it had been in the past. So to hear that the county has a $5 million deficit, there obviously must be reasons behind it. So could you take a few minutes to kind of explain on why you got such a strong fiscal crisis going on right now?
Okay, I'll try to, and understand I'm not a strong budget person. I don't claim to be that. I did put together an article which will be disseminated during the coming week from my perspective about the budget process generally in the area, but focusing on Eaton County. But that $5 million it consists of a couple of different elements. One of the primary surprises, and I don't know if it should have actually been a surprise, is that we received a substantial increase in the amount that we need to make in terms of contributions to our pension. That came from, I think MERS is our administrator and carrier, and that right away begins to take a significant amount of money out of the $5 million. I can't speak to the agenda of other people on the board, but there is concern within the board that the county for a long time has not addressed adequately some of the unfunded liabilities other than pension. We hear noise that there will be, we've considered furlough days to make up the deficit. We hear noise about unfunded liabilities or inability to meet escalating costs in our health care, including retiree health care, some of which has a budgetary impact beginning October 1st, and some of which is going to be with us for a while. It's not from physical expenditures. From my perspective, in terms of the normal course of business, it's not like we have been spending generally beyond our budget, what we anticipated spending. And it's not from emergency crises like sudden changes in the cost that we have associated with juvenile justice or juvenile care. I've heard a number of ideas as to where that comes from, but the consensus which comes from our Controller's Office, and I think it's been adopted by pretty much all of the the commissioners who have experience in looking into that, including, for example, you probably know Joe Brailer, is that there is, in fact, this shortfall. Beyond that, I am not the one to explain it technically in terms of where it derived. I can just say that the consensus seems to be that now we have this problem. There's physical, political philosophy involved in this too, because, in budgeting process, as you well know, it's all a matter of priorities and what people think might be essential. I circulated, and I think your manager, Brian Reed, has a copy of some of the paperwork, and I'd be happy to send it to you, because the question you're answering was addressed by our controller in a written document in which he made some possible recommendations to accommodate this and tried to explain it. And that was a couple of months ago. And so I'm standing here trying to recall the rationale. But I understand your question. It's a very important question, obviously. I think I would just end that response by saying I can't articulate completely where it came from. I know where parts of it came from, but it doesn't seem like we're really dealing with a manufactured paper financial crisis at this point in time in terms of our obligations to have a balanced budget too. I hope that's at all helpful, but like I said, since you have not seen the documentation, which I thought responsibly somebody would have shared with you by this point in time, I'd be happy tomorrow when I get back to my home, my office, to try to get that information to Mr. Reed, and he can provide that to you as a part of your work process and planning process.
And Brian has been at meetings and stuff.
Oh, sure.
So we're aware of the situation.
Right.
I was just asking in terms of, you were talking in terms of, potential cuts that will have to happen and stuff. So I was just asking the genesis of the problem and what is the commission doing to fix the structural problem and then deal with the immediate problem of filling your $5 million hole. But obviously, there's a reason that led to that. So what are you doing? That should be your first priority, is to fix that structural problem that you have and get to a permanent solution so that this doesn't become a growing problem going forward, where this year it's $5 million, the next year it's X number of million.
Right, and in fact, some of the discussion that we've had at our budget process has been that even when we do this plug, there's no guarantee that next year we won't be back with a significant number of, significantly smaller number of employees, but the same type of problem. It is a structural problem, and it's somewhat separate from the budget problem in our discussion, but it will certainly impact on the budget going forward. A lot of this problem generally, and I'm speaking for myself as an individual, not the Board of Commissioners. Historically, we've not made the tough and hard and responsible decisions that we probably should have in terms of some of our long-term liabilities. A part of that may have been related to making assumptions, actuarial and otherwise, about where we would be in a certain number of years, but some of it was just basically kicking the can down the road for political or partisan reasons. It's always easier. A large number of our employees are in collective bargaining agreements, many of whom work for you. And from my perspective, there is a structural problem that needs to be fixed in order to bring down our unfunded liabilities, which are going to continue to be a nemesis for us in terms of our contributions that we have to make. We're at 58% of our funded level, I think, now is what we're saying for pensions. And so, and I don't want to get in an unfair labor practice here, but I'm speaking as an individual. We look at some of the contracts we've made in the past. We've negotiated with our employees who are represented, and it seems to me pretty obvious that at some point in time we're going to have to start talking, at some point soon in the time, to our employees about things such as your pensions, the multiplier. I think we're at 3 or 3.2 as a multiplier for our pensions, for example, in our collective bargaining agreements with our law enforcement. And it's very handsome. I retired from the state after 33 years, and the state of Michigan, when I retired, they gave me an incentive to leave at 1.75 instead of 1.5 as a multiplier, and I was happy for that. I understand the differences between law enforcement and their pensions and the risks involved, but when you start looking at early retirement potentials in the contracts, if you start looking at the multiplier, those are going up at a rate that pretty much is unsustainable. I've told some of my colleagues, and you know, I've said it, so I always stand by what I say, because I like being accountable. When we were talking about this problem, at first when the problem came up, a lot of the commissioners who were smiling and pushing for getting rid of 24 patrol officers in the sheriff's department for whatever reasons had not stopped to realize that, for example, Delta has this contract, and that if you cut 24 people immediately from the sheriff's department, those probably won't be positions coming out of Delta. And that kind of changed the tenor of how they looked at the problem, because they had not stopped to think that this would impact them primarily in places like Bellevue or wherever, Diamonddale, wherever the sheriff's department road patrol was perhaps the only law enforcement. So we've begun to look at it more soberly. I have to say this isn't approached in a partisan way at this point. We have our preferences, our druthers, but I think across the board now we are pretty much convinced that in order for us to meet our statutory duty to have a balanced budget and to fill that plug, whether it's $5 million or $3.8 million, depending on some of the assumptions and discussions that's going on, it's going to end up in a reduction in personnel and county services. So I will get you the information I have. I'll get it to Brian. And like you mentioned, Brian has been there, and we've chatted a couple of times off the record about it, so I'm sure that he at least has a good sense for it. But in terms of its importance, you're right, Supervisor Fletcher. This board should be knowing something about the environment which they have such a big stake in. You know, at some point in time, as I sit there at that commission, and you know, I advocate for the county, but I live in Delta, and I want Delta to be a safe place for me to live and my neighbors to live. And so, yes, we want to all do our part for the county, but I was elected and I represent people here in Delta. So that's one of the reasons I decided that Delta needed to be aware of this earlier rather than later, in terms of how they might want to approach it, and in terms of how, for example, the county might come to them and ask for assistance or modifications to the contract. Because it's a serious topic when commissioners say, well, if they aren't going to cooperate, then maybe the contract can be terminated in a year by either. I don't think it's a very responsible approach. It's probably more of a political power approach, but it's not the collaboration we need to protect 1/3 of the people of Eaton County. So that's why I came. And this is Howard Spence, Commissioner, speaking instead of Board of Commissioners. John Fuentes or the chairman of the board might come and give you their view, but I think it's already pretty well documented. There's been a lot of public feedback. Surprisingly, we've had a lot of people come to our 2 prior budget planning meetings, and a large group of them are our former employees who retired with expectations that they would have health insurance, for example, and now that they're no longer employees, even if they were members of the sheriff's department, they're no longer represented by these bargaining units, their health insurance benefits could be discontinued. And at least this is what I'm hearing legally, and I don't particularly disagree with it based on what I've seen in terms of the case law, in the private sector at least. So I think it's also a serious consideration for employees who have given a lot of service to the county and to the people of the state of Michigan who are of my age or older, who suddenly find out that tomorrow they may be uninsured. as well as, well, their pensions are set because they're retired, but I think there's a certain responsibility and accountability and transparency that's needed so that we can come to the best result for everyone.
Mary, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I actually have, I have a question and an observation/question.
Okay.
When you talk about MERS, it's been at least 2 years that our CPA auditing firm has been prepping
Is that Rockman?
us- I'm sorry?
Is your firm Rockman?
No, it's Maynard Casterson.
Okay.
Has been prepping us for the GASB, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, accounting changes that surfaced
Right.
this deficit, because without those changes, this deficit would just be rolling down the road still.
Sure.
So I'm somewhat disappointed that with awareness that this was coming down the low, and this is not to you, it's for you to take back if you
Sure.
like, but disappointment that the county commissioners should have been aware, or you need a different auditing firm, that this was coming and yet still did nothing in preparation for it. That's my first comment. And then my question is, has the board considered perhaps looking at Headlee Rollback?
Oh, okay, you're looking at the revenue side.
Well, if you have a deficit, you have to have revenue. So, yeah, I am. I'm looking at both of them.
Okay. Let me address some of the points you made, and as I recall them. If I don't get them all, just remind me, Mary. We have been discussing, I've been on the commission 5 years now. For 5 years, these unfunded liabilities, kicking the can down the road, making the hard decisions. And in fact, 1 year, I think it was at least 2 or 3 years ago, we spent a considerable amount of time educating ourselves on some of these unfunded liabilities, bringing in people to discuss them with us. And so, yes, we've known that these unfunded liabilities were building, and I think we've known that probably as a commission going back maybe 10 years or more.
But my question directly affects, you knew the MERS changes were coming.
Oh, well, it depends on what the MERS changes are, because like I said, I'm not the budget person.
Right, that's right.
One of the MERS changes that we may not have known was coming was they apparently have made some decisions which aren't communicated just to us, but across the board to a lot of their the pension and health care plans, whatever they're working with, that they are going to begin enforcing greater degrees of funding and responsibility. And so, in fact, I've even heard some discussion to indicate that there's been some discussion that at the MERS level, that perhaps the eventual goal is to fund these not at what is 100% now, but more, which, I scratch my head, it won't be unfunded liability, it would possibly even be an overfunded liability. But what we had not anticipated for this year, as I understand it, was that we were going to get a requirement that we fund at a higher level and meet it in the coming year. And so that took some money out of our fund, reserves or general funds that we had not anticipated using for that purpose.
Okay. And then what about Headlee?
We have talked about Headlee. I have been branded as a tax and spend liberal. My attitude, and I verbalize this at the commission meeting, is if the people want services, they have to pay for them. The Headlee Rollback, we have been discussing that. That was something that was on the agenda. And within the past week and a half, while we were doing in our public open meetings the discussions about that, the consensus coming from our controller and our Ways and Means Chairman and Blake Mulder, our chair, was that putting this on the ballot for a Headlee Rollback or whatever the process would be was not something that we were either going to be successful at or qualified to do. And I can't articulate why that would be. So that was an option we had considered. We have also considered and talked about the possibility of getting a dedicated millage like some counties have. And again, I'm not the numbers person. I think we may have a millage for general operations now that is the equivalent, as I understand it, of maybe 5%, and there was some discussion that maybe we would have to go to the electorate, to the voters, and ask for a permanent operating millage like some counties have. And then there was some discussion that that might be 1 mil more than we're presently getting on a permanent, ongoing basis. So the addition and subtraction of parts was there. There's also some discussion about going to the electorate with proposals for fund increases, given the fact that we even have some expiring millages this coming year. I think one of the millages which will be expiring within the next year and a half is the juvenile justice millage. And, that is something that the people have been generally receptive to funding. But there's this concern about if you keep asking for a whole bunch of increments, are we asking for more than the public is either willing or thinks they're able to do? So yes, we are discussing the revenue side, and I'm somewhat, I guess I'm pleased to say we're doing that, because in the past there have been philosophical elements on our board which would not even consider a revenue enhancement, or as I call it, a tax increase. There is a proposal, but it still requires, in many instances, going back to the electorate to begin doing some fee increases or fee-for-service things. I think that came up. I had mentioned the improvement the improvement or purchasing of new equipment and so forth for the dispatch 911 system, the radio communication towers, that type of thing. And I think Armitage, who is our director for 911, had suggested that it should be a millage. And some of the members of the commission who are more knowledgeable than I am had said, well, that's not going to go because we have all these other things coming up. Why don't we try to do a fee for service, because the statute allows a per handset assessment for purchase of new equipment for communications. And at our last meeting, I think the discussion was that in order to fund the enhancement in services that the controller and the 911 director was recommending of $15 million over I think several years, 6 years is the number, that they'd have to go to a fee of like $1.50 or something per handset. So if you had 2 or 3 cell phones, then suddenly each month you're going to get an extra $1.50 per each of the lines. But that is less reliable. And then we were informed that if we decided to go, for example, for fees on the handsets for that particular needed service or upgrade in equipment, we could only go to 42 cents without having to go to the electorate for approval to have a fee beyond the 42 cents per line, even though the state statute allows us to have per fee. There's a limitation. So yes, we're looking at that. That's not something that is going to help us in terms of the coming fiscal budget year because of the timing. I was not focused or aware of the impending problem until perhaps February or March when they began to talk about it, and I thought it had originally been the typical political buildup to we need to have conservative budgets. We're not apparently aware that we were going to have this particular problem last year in October, November, December. So now when we get to April and May is the first time that we actually had a formal presentation on it in a written form, which I can share with you. And that does not allow you to have time to have millage votes. The earliest millage vote for anything, I believe at this point that was discussed at least, would have been like November of this year. And that would have to have been approved and set, I think, by like next week or, yeah, and so that's not going to happen. And so since that's not happening, there would be no revenue enhancements or even attempts at enhancement during the time frame that we have to actually complete our budget decisions. And so as of October 1st, we have a budget in place, and it's my expectation, and it seems to be sort of the fallback expectation of everybody, including other commissioners here from Delta Township, that we're not going to be able to make the plug without cutting services, and most likely that would be in public safety, which everybody says is troubling, including me, but I don't know that there are other options. And when I first came here, I did not anticipate saying that Delta would lose police officers because you have a contract. What I anticipated saying was you might lose the good, well-trained, and well-liked police officers you have just based on the fact they're in a bargaining unit, which applies seniority to preference. So some of the young officers that we've been hearing about and praising and thankful for in the past year or two who are low seniority may go. And, the reality is, for them at least, because I'm very much interested in people, this is, sort of a fortunate time for that bad news to drop, because we all like Delta, but we all like to work. And Chief Yankowski and the city of Lansing is busy trying to hire police officers because they realize that we're in a time when we need that additional safety element. And so I would think that if this goes the way that it could well go, which I anticipate it will go, we'll probably lose some of our better younger officers, and they'll be across Waverly. And just like I told my colleagues on the board, I said, my experience in human resources and dealing with people, and my own experience, once they leave, they're not coming back. And and once they leave, people are not stupid. Future employment prospects will say, well, they've been laying off police officers, and now they're hiring again. Isn't there someplace else I could go? Because of the lack of stability, and it's hard to get past a reputation. So that is kind of where we are. I know this board is very concerned about public safety because, I've discussed that with some of you as individuals. There have been times in the past, I'm sure, when you have discussed, because Delta, as Charter Township, is the equivalent of a small city, we have contracted for our services. If that's not stable, then how are we going to plan for the future of our people? I do know my neighbors like to see those black and white cars going up and down the streets, especially through the neighborhoods and stuff like that. So it was that experience and the respect I have for our present police officers that caused me to want to come and to give this board that opportunity to get involved in any way they thought appropriate or possible, to at least let their positions be known early on, even if it doesn't impact the outcome. I think it does send some signals to people who don't particularly value services that government provides, that you get what you pay for and you don't miss anything until it's gone. So.
Are there other questions on the board?
I'm sorry, I have my hearing aids in. I'm trying to figure out who's talking.
I'm asking if there's any other questions for you, and it doesn't appear that there's any, Commissioner. So we appreciate you coming forward today to share this information. You do have a very tough job ahead of you because the Headlee Rollback, the fee increases you talked about, doesn't come anywhere near $5 million. So you're going to do all those things and lay off people and have to go back and get cuts from your employees' benefit packages, and it's all going to have to be part of the package. So you guys are going to have to do some very tough, difficult things going forward. And I know as an individual taxpayer and as a township official, I personally am not looking to put more money after a system that's not fixed so it's sustainable going forward. So you're going to have to do that, I think, before you go out to the voters and go out to other governmental units and ask for money to help with this deficit. You got to prove that it's been fixed. And this is no surprise. These retirement issues and stuff have been coming down the pike for a long time. It's been talked about in every newspaper and media about, you know, the local government liabilities that are out there, and I know there's been requirements and stuff that I know has been brought forward and stuff to this board for many years that they need to be dealt with. So if the Board of Commissioners just found out about this in February, then there's some serious problems in the government of Eaton County.
Oh, no, they've known that we have these issues, structural issues for some time. They've just not been ready and willing to address them.
Who are they? Aren't you part of them?
We, you know, whenever you're embarrassed, it's always they. But whenever you're being accountable, I guess it's we. We've known about these issues, and even from both sides of the aisle, there's been a significant amount of resistance to addressing these issues from the side of the aisle that I'm on. For a number of reasons. And so it's like the kid that finally you catch him in the corner, you slap him, and you say, you know, the jig is up, you're going to have to, or get off the pot. So I agree completely with you, Commissioner Fletcher. These will have to be some tough decisions made. My regret is that it's going to impact adversely on employees and citizens in the short term.
When you get a hold this big, there's no way to not impact people.
Well, okay, and I know you realize that, and I'm glad that you can verbalize it, because I came to the same conclusion. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate you being here. Any other final public comment?